The Onion has a set of a very well produced, like shockingly well produced, especially the older ones, satirical news videos on their YouTube channel. And my favorite one of those videos, the older ones, is one that is essentially a newscast from the future. This is a dense masterpiece of a video, hilarious, layers of humor, and also the production is like shockingly good. My favorite bit in that video is the reporting on the president's failure to keep his campaign promises to end the world. I thought that was hilarious.
It's frustrating. Every day the government keeps saying we're all going to die, and then it not happens. If I could remove my obedience chip, I'd just kill myself.
And also I enjoyed it because like if somebody was running today on that platform, hey, I promise I will end the world, I would be their number one supporter. I would be the chief door knocker for that campaign. That would be me because oh my God.
President Performance H. Wilson, who was voted into office for his sixth term, primarily because he promised to kill us all.
I am generally like just very cynical, just always, but nothing has entrenched those feelings of just wanting the end of our species as a whole than the research I've done and the books I've read to try and understand what the hell's going on. And it goes beyond just politics. Politics is the runny nose and the fever and the blocked, stuffy sinuses. You know, the virus itself is, I think, the state of humanity in general.
Pushing back the death date is the only realistic way to make sure that when the machine is turned on, that we will all be atomized.
So a few months ago, I was, reading the news as one does if one hates oneself, and trying to understand what is going on. Why does it seem like people are all of a sudden like extremely thirsty for authoritarians? Like, what's going on? I wanted to find out what's going on, especially in a certain country that is, depending on when this video comes out, having an election or has had an election. Side note, prediction, I don't think it's going to be even close. I think she's going to win, and like it's not even going to be close. I think that the polls, okay, you know what? I'll save my rant about the weird polling that comes out of that country later. But whatever. Anyway, I wanted to understand what was going on. It seems like there's like a lot of people who are thirsty for autocrats and authoritarians, and I wanted to know, is that so and why? There's good news and bad news. The bad news is that I am even more cynical than I was before, but there is good news. And let's start with that. The good news is that there isn't all of a sudden just like a huge swell of support for authoritarians in asterisk Western high-income countries. We'll get into it. But I want to start somewhere else. I want to start with autocracy in general. Autocracy Incorporated, an illuminating book written by a journalist. It reads like you're watching a documentary. It's so well done. This book is about the business of autocracy. Autocrats, it argues, become autocrats for the money. You can see the roots of an autocracy start when corruption becomes rampant and rife in a society and it goes unchecked, and the riches of the world are like, oh, I can make so much money. The book is also about how this corruption and their looting is facilitated directly and indirectly by democratic nations. A good example of this that's in this book is about Germany, the Germany-Russian gas pipeline. Anyway, these mostly Western democratic nations support and facilitate autocracy because of apathy sometimes, or sometimes out of a misguided attempt at change through trade. The book argues that, yeah, there is change occurring, but it's not the way that you think it is. One of the reasons why it seems as if there's all of a sudden such a big appetite for the dicks of the world is because autocrats, these countries, spend actual money. There is a concerted effort to promote autocracy and authoritarianism. Huge amounts of dollars are being spent not just to legitimize these autocrats' rule and their actions, but also to promote autocracy in general. How much money, if you live in a democracy, how much money has your country spent trying to promote democracy? Exactly. Investments in media, RT, CCTV, etc. Investments in troll farms online and disinformation and misinformation campaigns that are just like shockingly successful. We are so easily fooled. We should not exist. They also support each other financially by arresting dissidents. You are like the opposition in Zimbabwe or something and you go to Russia, they'll arrest you. The Russian government will arrest you for the Zimbabwean government. But that's the main thing I got out of this book, is just there is an actual effort being put into spreading autocracy. People don't just wake up one day and decide, hey, I think we should get a dictator. For most of us, there is effort and money being put into this. And that's good news, right?
You don't need a bunch of empty promises. You need to die.
So that is good news. The fact that the majority of people are not all of a sudden out of nowhere being thirsty for Big Richard to come and make everything better or whatever is going on. But the problem is that these people and their ideas are not confined to their political party or to specific, Senate or parliamentary committees or to their voter base. Their ideas spread. So even if a ruler or a party is not particularly successful politically, Brexit still happened. UKIP doesn't run the country, but Brexit still happened. We just shouldn't exist. That's the solution. The solution is just to end all of our lives. If they are successful, they're successful because of weird electoral systems. If the US didn't have that nonsense that they have, if everyone's vote counted, then this would have never have happened. Hillary Clinton would have won in 2016. We wouldn't be sitting here scratching our heads, wondering who's this guy? Why are you trying to make a giant toddler in charge of the biggest military and nuclear weapons arsenal in the world again, with preparation this time. This time they're prepared. And this time there's nobody to stop him. Think about how often you, as a normal person, I'm assuming you're a normal person watching this video, think about what you think about immigration, right? If you are a normal person, you are at worst neutral about it, or if you are a good normal person, you have positive feelings towards immigration. I can tell you that I personally never think about immigration or migrants until I read something, until I read some news item about some crisis, some humanitarian crisis, something. I'm like, oh my God, somebody needs to do something. But think about how loud and obnoxious the people who are weird about immigration are. What messaging do you hear more often? Do you hear immigration is neither good nor bad, it just is, like me? Or do you hear too, immigration is great, we just need to process people faster, and integrate them faster. It's good that people can escape terrible situations and we should facilitate that. Or 3, do you hear, oh my God, immigrants are bad and they're taking our jobs and they're killing everybody and they're raping and everything that's going wrong in our countries because of migrants, and they're poisoning the blood of the country or something. It's something I heard recently. They're cutting in line. They're being taken better care of than I am as a citizen of this country. Why are we spending?
I'm a little better off because at least I have this baby to sell. But I still want the world gone.
While we're on that topic, let's talk about what specifically is motivating the dick lovers of the world and why it may not necessarily be what you think. If you were like me and you thought it was a specific thing. I thought it was a specific thing, and then I read this book and I was like, oh, that makes more sense than my thing that I thought it was, even though my thing made sense. Cultural backlash. Anyway, this is written by 2 researchers and possibly university professors, and it reads that way. It reads like a textbook. It took me a week to read this book. It does not take me a week to read a book that I'm reading for fun. Anyway, that's not a complaint. It's just a statement. Every chapter in this book is written like a research paper, and I love that. I love put a graph in a book and you have me. I'm on board. The book answers that no, post Samu, the dick lovers of the world are not motivated by economic grievance, honey. Which is what I thought going into this book. It's cultural. This is generational backlash to the cultural changes that have occurred in the West, specifically over the past few decades. Basically, somebody puts 10,000 people in a room, and me, current day me, who has read this book, and past Samu, and they say, hey, I want you guys to identify, this is a competition, see who can identify the most Trump or Brexit voters. Okay? Past me, who didn't read the book, would go around asking people, hey, how do you feel about the economy? And if somebody says, hey, I used to live in a small factory town, and all the factories have closed down, all the manufacturing jobs are gone, blah, blah, blah. Past someone would say, oh, this is a Trump voter. I've got him. Me, having read this book, all I would do is ask, were you born in the 1960s or earlier? That's all I would ask. And guess who would be able to identify the most Trump voters? Current day me. The fact that it's just like a generational thing, that it's just age, is crazy to me. But again, this book is so convincing, and it had to be, because I needed convincing and I was convinced. So a lot of things are happening here. Number 1, The older two generations are more socially conservative than the younger generations. And in this book, the younger generations, because I think this was released in like 2016, 2017. So the younger generations in this book are millennials and Gen Xers. The Taylor Swift and Blondie, Kendrick Lamar and Billy Idol. Two, the older generations are also more religious. And also, there's this whole post-materialist versus a materialist thing going on as well that I'm not going to get into. But basically, people of the older two generations are finding themselves living in a world that they just don't recognize. They're like, what the hell is going on? More people are in university, especially more women. More people live in urban areas in the cities. People are less religious in general. Gay people can walk around holding hands and somebody will tell you off if you call them a slur. And this is perhaps the most anxiety inducing one. There are more people in the country, whatever country it is, who don't look like them. There are different reactions to this change, to this finding yourself in a world you don't recognize. Number one, there's changing with the times. You know, like we've all met like cool older people who are like, oh, I think it's cool that gay people can get married, and I think it's cool that they can walk around holding hands. Another reaction is two, not necessarily accepting and changing with the times, but being silent. You know, not rocking the boat to avoid being ostracized socially. And the third reaction is what we're seeing now, finding enclaves of like-minded people, people who are also like, oh my God, why are there so many brown people in this country? Isn't it crazy how there are so many brown people in this country? You know, finding people who think like you and then kind of congregate together to commiserate with and stew in your own filth. And in these little enclaves, you're shielded from criticism from, you know, the woke mob, but the liberal elites. It's actually crazy how you can't be a racist anymore without people calling you a racist. Like, it's nuts. Like, it's, oh my God. Back in my day.
News for real. A new poll finds most people wish dinosaurs were still extinct.
3, people in older generations are more likely to agree with and or hold authoritarian values than younger people. Authoritarian values like conformity and like, you know, listen, you gotta listen to the leader no matter what. Don't question the leader. All of that stuff. You know, this book has a headache-inducing amount of research to support its point. And again, by the end of it, I was convinced. But think about it in your life. Like, what kind of arguments are you having with your Rupert Murdoch product enjoying grandparents or parents? Are you having conversations about how, you know, they think neoliberal economic policies are actually working and they're great and they're awesome and everyone is happy and economic inequality is not even that bad? Or are you having arguments about immigration? 4, turns out economic grievance is more likely to inspire support for populism or anti-establishment anti-establishment sentiment, but not authoritarianism. Another thing to consider, and the thing that like just really convinced me, was that in 2016 the least well-off households in the US the majority of them voted for Clinton. So you might have some young people and quite possibly people with economic grievance who are attracted to the populism, to the anti-establishment sentiment. But for a lot of those people, they find the authoritarianism to be a turnoff. You have to be into the authoritarianism to support these people. It's not necessarily the populism. 5, the two younger generations make up more of the electorate, but they don't vote as much. The older generations vote more than the younger people. That's why their cultural backlash policies are overrepresented in the political sphere, because you don't vote. That's why there's so much hysteria and hysteria over like immigration and, you know, book bans. That's why Brexit happened. Young people wanted to stay in the EU, the people who are going to be alive in 5 years. I find this interesting because I'm assuming that you make up one of the younger generations. You grew up in a multicultural society. You grew up around people whose parents spoke other languages. You've had Iranian food, you've had Ethiopian food, you have a favorite Chinese restaurant, you've had sushi, you've had Korean barbecue. You think people should be treated equally and don't immediately assume that people who don't look like you are out to get you or whatever. You know, like it's normal to you to have different types of people running around, existing around you. You grew up like that, and no one can convince you, your grandparents who loves, you know, Rupert Murdoch media product number 5, they can't convince you that it's bad. They can't convince you, hey, you should actually be afraid of this, and you should actually be as angry about this as I am. The ones who have not, adapted to the times, have not moved on with the times, it's the same thing with them. They're like, this is what is this? Like, what's going on? Legitimately confused and upset by the changes that have occurred. They feel like strangers in their own country. Nothing you say can convince them that, hey, actually, it's okay. And they just want Dick to come and make things better again. Make things the same as they were before by mass deporting people. Like, what is going on?
President Wilson's approval ratings have gone down steadily since that first delay, accepting a small rise when he personally murdered 7,000 people with a hatchet.
It also can't be overstated just how much of the backlash is motivated by, racial animus. Or if we're being charitable, let's be nice, we'll say racial anxiety. When they say immigration, they mean, oh my God, there are so many black and brown people. All of a sudden, oh my God, that's what they mean. We all know that's what they mean. Anyway, they'll be dead in a few decades. So, I guess that's great news. It's just a pity that they want to leave a worse world behind.
Do you want to die? I can't hear you! Do you want to die?
President Wilson's approval ratings have gone down steadily.
In part two, we're going to talk about why I want President Wilson to end the world. Goodbye. I'm going to leave you again with my prediction that it's not even going to be close. We'll see when this video comes out. It's not even going to be close, number one. Number two, what is going on with the polls? Like I'm a food technician, right? And if you came to me and you said, hey, I need you to determine the nutritional content of my food product, please. And I said to you, cool, I can do that. But our figures are going to be off by 4 grams or 4%. You would look at me and say, okay, thank you. Thank you so much, and leave and go and find another company. So why is that acceptable in polls? So the data that they keep giving us in the news that I keep reading is useless at this point. They're like, oh, it's a toss-up, because then it only means something if somebody's winning by a huge landslide. Then would it even matter at that point? But now when it counts, when it does matter, when it's allegedly close, it's useless. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand. So it's just useless. Pointless information. Just clogging up my newsfeed with nonsense.